Welcome to the Audio Inc. Radio podcast, featuring interviews with the biggest names in rock and metal. Hosted by Anne Erickson.
Get inked. Visit Facebook.com/Audio Inc. Radio, Twitter.com/Audio Inc. Radio, and AudioIncRadio.com for more ink. Whew, that's a lot of ink. It's AudioIncRadio.com.
Welcome to another hang session, I guess you could say, with me, Anne Erickson, your host for Audio Inc. Radio. It's great to hang out with you as always. You know, personally, whenever a band changes their lineup a lot, sometimes it just doesn't rub me the right way. I don't know, maybe because I've been in bands and I know how it feels to kind of be replaced. But sometimes, especially when that band member is like a really crucial part of the band, it seems like a different band. Case in point, Stone Temple Pilots. They obviously, the Scott Weiland thing didn't work out, and they brought Chester from Linkin Park in, which I never even had, honestly, a desire to see Chester in STP. I love Chester, don't get me wrong. I mean, I just love his work in Linkin Park, but when it came to Stone Temple Pilots, I know that the DeLeo brothers were a huge part of that band, but I felt like Scott Weiland, for all the issues and stuff that he dealt with, he was the heart and the soul of SDP. And now they have another new vocalist, Jeff Goot, who is from the Detroit area, which is cool. And he's also very talented and stuff like that. But for me, Stone Temple Pilots, I mean, they should just let it go. It's just my little thought on it. I know they did a few years try to do something, the DeLeo brothers, under a different name, and maybe that just didn't do what they were hoping it would do, so they went back to SDP. But that's one band where I personally just think that the change in the band member was too big to overcome. Now, there are bands that do it very well. Case in point, Robert Mason from Warrant. I mean, he had a really tough job in that Janie from Warrant was such a big part of the band, and he was so loved by the fans. But Robert is so awesome. I mean, I've talked to him a bunch, and he's a great personality. He's got his stuff together. And of course, he's an incredible frontman, incredible, charismatic on stage. And he's got the pipes. I mean, he sounds great on stage. And I think that Robert does Janie more than justice. And the fans just love Robert. That's a case where I do think the band Warrant was able to forge ahead with a new vocalist and sound amazing and really carry that legacy of Warrant. Another band that I think has done actually very well with two vocalists, not at the same time, but Killswitch Engage. I mean, you have Howard Jones and then you have Jesse Leach, kind of the two different Killswitch Engage versions. I know a lot of people prefer Jesse because he kind of, started the whole thing, and he's the lead singer now, and Jesse is great. I love his just very guttural delivery. But I'm kind of a Howard type person. I really enjoyed Howard's work on The End of Heartache. Remember that record? That is my favorite record from Killswitch Engage. Howard has that really soulful power in his voice, and he can scream and cry out and do all those guttural crazy things, but then he's got this beautiful soulful voice that I just love to hear with Killswitch Engage, because they are such a melodic kind of band. Even though they're heavy, they're a melodic heavy band, hence metalcore. But that's another band where I do think that they did a good job going from a one vocalist to the next. Another obvious one is AC/DC with Bon Scott, who sadly passed away, and then Brian Johnson has done an amazing job fronting AC/DC, and that's just obviously a very successful, huge band, And I love their new record, by the way, Power Up. I gave it a great review when I wrote a review for it for Audio Inc. Radio. I gave it 9 out of 10, I think, something like that. But there was so much build and anticipation around that record. And then, bam, it was everything that people had hoped for. Really sounds like that Back in Black era AC/DC. So there again, another example of a band that did really well having a new vocalist. Another one that, of course, I have to mention because I'm such a huge fan, Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. I mean, it's crazy to think that he was not the original vocalist for Iron Maiden, because I just think of those two names in tandem, Bruce Dickinson, Iron Maiden. But there's another example of a band that really forged ahead with a new vocalist and sounded amazing. But I have to say, I'm really glad that so far I haven't heard any rumors or ramblings about Soundgarden going forward with a different vocalist. I cannot imagine Soundgarden with anyone but Chris Cornell. I mean, there are a lot of great vocalists out there, but Chris Cornell just made that band so unique and so special. And I know Kim had a big part in that as well. But I think that the dynamic, that Soundgarden dynamic, just would not be possible without Chris Cornell as the lead vocalist. I would be totally cool if the members would do something else under a different name or whatnot, and maybe they will. I've kind of heard some stuff about that. But Soundgarden without Chris Cornell, no. Not happening. Just a big no for me. Now, I was actually a bigger fan of Audioslave than Soundgarden. That band I could actually maybe see doing some kind of a show or something with a different vocalist, just because it is a super group type thing. But even that, probably not. I really think that Chris Cornell is untouchable when it comes to vocals and singing and charisma, and nobody should replace Chris Cornell probably in any of his bands and projects. The reason I'm talking about all this stuff is because we have a guest on the show right now, today or tonight, whenever you're rocking, who has done an amazing job stepping into that lead frontman role. I'm talking about Todd from Queensryche, which, of course, he joined the band in 2012, and Jeff Tate had been the lead vocalist for something like 2 decades, so a long time. Todd became the lead vocalist of Queensryche back in 2012. Jeff Tate, of course, was the previous vocalist, who also is amazing. But when it comes to Todd, I mean, he did such an incredible job stepping into that role, and the fans, for the most part, they really embraced him because he's so talented and his voice just fit those songs so well. But he also brought something else. He brought something different and kind of special. He made it his own. Not to sound trite, but he did make it his own. And I think that Todd is an incredible frontman for Queensryche. I think that anything he does just turns to gold. And he has a new solo record out, which is unbelievable. The thing that I love about it is it's very unexpected. It's much heavier than Queensryche stuff. I mean, Queensryche's got the huge, grandiose melodies and stuff like that. But Todd, he's a metalhead. I mean, this guy loves the heavier, the better. Screaming, growling, all that stuff. So his solo record, I was pretty surprised actually, just because I had no idea that he had this love for super heavy music. The new album is titled Rejoice in the Suffering, and it's a very brutal title for a very brutal set. It's great. I mean, if you're a metalhead, you're going to love it. And if you dig his work in Queensryche, there is some of that on there as well. I mean, it is quite different because he already can get his kicks and do his stuff, his melodic stuff with Queensryche. But I'm very excited to have Todd on the show. At first I was going to say that I don't think I've ever interviewed him before, but of course I have. I interviewed him just a few years ago with Queensryche. Sometimes all the interviews run into each other in my head. So that happens. It happens, right? Life happens. But so Todd is a great guest. Very excited to talk all about the new solo record and what's the deal with new Queensryche. What's happening on that front. And just a reminder that I'm Anne Erickson. You're rocking out to the Audio Inc. Radio podcast featuring the biggest names in rock and metal music. And if you dig what you hear, which I hope that you do, definitely subscribe wherever you rock out to podcast. You can find us on pretty much every major podcast platform. Just search Anne Erickson or search Audio Inc. Radio wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit subscribe. And if you would leave a 5-star review on Apple, that would be so wonderful. Thank you for all of the amazing support. And hey, don't forget to link up with me online. I'm pretty much online all the time. Way too much. And I would love to hear from you. Hit me up on email, anne@audioinkradio.com. That's INK like tattoo ink. Anne@audioinkradio.com. You can also just get in touch direct. Head to itsmeanne.com. That's itsmeanne.com. itsmeanne.com to link up on my personal Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and stuff. And you can just direct find my Twitter at Anne Erickson, Instagram at Erickson Anne, and you can also find random fun stuff at itsmeanne.com. Whereas Audio Inc. Radio features news articles, what's hot, what's going on right now in the rock and metal world. And hey, I say, why wait? Let's get into the main attraction, chatting right now with Todd from Queensryche.
Hey everyone, this is Todd La Torre from Queensryche, and you're listening to Anne Erickson on Audio Inc. Radio.
So it's a very exciting time for you because you have your debut solo album on the way, Rejoice in the Suffering, which is really cool. And that's a great title. So tell me about kind of the meaning behind Rejoice in the Suffering.
I didn't initially plan to call the record that. That was the first song that we wrote, that Craig and I wrote. And, some of this, the initial writings for this record were kind of surrounding my dad's death. He committed suicide back in 2014. And so it was me kind of purging and getting out some of these emotions and feelings. And there are things in there, obviously, that people wouldn't understand. They won't know what some of the lyrics mean or what they're referencing. And that title kind of has to do with the events that surrounded some of the personal toxicity and turmoil that was surrounding my dad's death. And so that was where the title kind of came from. It was it wasn't such a nice thing, let's just say.
Right, yeah.
But it's when I titled that song that way, I just loved it. And then when we finally got done with the, I remember initially or earlier on, I was like, we had so many songs, and I said, I still think this would be a really good album title. And then we came up with the Ouroboros. That's a very ancient symbol, and it just kind of tied in with the artwork really well. And it's more personal that I probably want to reveal all the details, but I can just say that a lot of that surrounds my dad's death.
Right. Was it hard to get personal and write music about that experience? Because, obviously that is a really difficult situation, and I think that people appreciate that you did kind of open up there.
It wasn't, it was therapeutic, to be honest. There are moments where, because the song Apology is also about that. The song Apology is kind of, if I had to see what my dad's last day would be like through his eyes, that was kind of the storytelling of the song Apology. And it was, there were moments where it was difficult, but it was also like very therapeutic to just get this stuff out, and sing it and kind of purge. And so it was all good, though. It wasn't like bad. Everything in there was comforting to me to do.
The single Vanguards of the Dawn Wall is so brutal and heavy. It's like, it's so different, from what fans usually hear from you. And I love it. Tell me about your direction here. Yeah. And how it was kind of a heavier direction for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that track, Craig had some music for, some riffs for that. And I was feeling like that vocal style, that song kind of needed something really kind of harsh and shrill and aggressive. And then I was watching, I had seen a really great documentary called Free Solo. I don't know if you've seen it, but you should totally watch it. It's a documentary about a guy that climbs El Capitan at Yosemite National Park. And he free climbs this mountain, if you will, with no ropes, no harnesses, no nothing. It's pretty nuts. And then I watched it. I watched that a couple times. Then I saw another documentary called The Dawn Wall. And this is what they call one face of this wall. I guess that's where I think the sun hits it first or something like that. But nevertheless, these two climbers climbed this, and I was really kind of going down this rabbit hole of all these amazing climbers. And because I typically write my content, subject matter is usually, geopolitical or social issues or, things about religion or whatever. This was like a total shift for me. And I was like, I want to write a song about these climbers. And so I just wrote that. I think we wrote that song in a couple days. And then for the video, I have some friends that climb out in the Pacific Northwest, and actually one or two of the climbers actually has climbed and knows Tommy Caldwell, who was one of the climbers from the documentary The Dawn Wall. And so I said, hey, the next time you go out and climb, just capture some footage of you guys climbing. So they did, and I said, send it to me. I don't care if it's raw cell phone footage or anything. Let's just do this. And so at the end of the day, it really just kind of captured the spirit of climbing, not necessarily like just those guys that climbed what those documentaries were about. But that's what the song was written about. And, it's definitely a punch you in the face, full throttle, kind of a nonstop heavy metal track that, definitely threw people, I think, a curveball and weren't expecting me to sound like that, but it's gotten good feedback overall, so I can't complain.
Well, yeah, you did such a good job with it, and I think that was the surprise, because a lot of people try to shift their genre, but you just really nailed it. So it was like, wow, where did this come from?
Thanks, but this is stuff that I've always been into. It's just people only see that one side of me through Queensryche. And so they don't get to hear more of the heavier side of what I do, or what I can do. So this was just very natural for me to write and sing in this style and do that. It's just a whole nother side of what I do and what I like to do. And you guys just get to hear it for the first time, but I've been singing like this for 20 years.
Awesome. Well, were there any surprises when you went to record the first solo album? Just something that you didn't expect?
Not really. I mean, I've made a few records with Queensryche, so I'm very hip to the recording process and songwriting and that whole thing. And it was a pretty seamless thing to do. Craig and I wrote and recorded probably 98 or 9% of the record in about 4 months. And, we sent all the recordings to Zeus, and then he did the mixing and mastering on it, and here we are, so it wasn't any surprises or any weird things that happened, or, it was pretty straightforward and just all boom, 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 a lot of the songs just were written rather quickly. We were just in a really good creative headspace, and I didn't have the interruptions of being home for 3 days and jumping on a plane to go tour again. And, so it was really being able, knowing that I wasn't touring or traveling for, I don't know, however many months. We, at least for a few months when the shutdown started, we knew we were going to be home for a little while. And it was like, okay, I can get into this mode every single day and not be interrupted and really make progress here. So that was definitely something that helped get this accomplished when it did.
Do you think that any of your solo music will kind of bleed into the new stuff that you do with Queensryche?
No, they're apples and oranges. They're totally separate things. I don't write guitars really in like a Queensryche way. That's not where I shine in Queensryche. I think my lyric writing, my vocal phrasing, and delivery, and that sort of thing. That's kind of my asset to the writing process for Queensryche's music. I would never try to push this kind of style or sound into Queensryche's music. I don't really write music. I mean, I co-write stuff with them, and I might have a guitar riff idea or something, but they're totally separate things, and I would never want to pollute the waters of Queensryche with what I'm doing.
Well, then it's cool that you have this outlet where you can do stuff that's totally different from the band.
Yeah, and I think because I've been able to get this first one out, it's certainly I think that my eagerness to do things with Queensryche, those definitely take a back seat because I have this other outlet to do those things. So I feel less inclined to be like, oh, I need to scream here and show people what I can do on this. I really want to just respect what Queensryche's sound is and not change. I don't want to change the style and sound of what Queensryche is and should be. And so I very much draw a line in the sand where, I can experiment and try some things that might be fitting for a Queensryche song, but as far as pushing that onto them, I feel because I got that done, I'm more relaxed, doing the Queensryche stuff where I don't feel like I have to try to sneak in something heavier, because nobody's got to hear that from me. Now they get to hear a plethora of styles from me on this record.
Yeah, so what is the status of new stuff with Queensryche? Have you guys been doing anything because of the lockdown?
In fact, Michael Wilton is at my house here in Florida right now, and we're doing some writing together, and Zeus is here, and then Casey, who plays drums with us, he lives about 30 minutes away, so he's going to come by later, and, just getting ideas down, songwriting, kind of the old-fashioned way where people are in a room and you're coming up with ideas in real time and trying new things instead of always by yourself in your studio and then emailing an idea and then waiting for somebody to listen to it and then tell you what they think, and then we can get that might take a week for like one idea to make the full exchange and talk about it, whereas here in real time it takes 10 minutes. So yeah, we're writing new material for Queensryche, and so that's all starting, and happy. It's all good.
Yeah, that's exciting. Do you have any idea when you guys are hoping to get it out there?
It would be a little premature for me to say, but I would love for us to be able to put something out maybe by the end of this year. We'll see.
Well, fingers crossed.
It'll be a bottleneck thing because every band is going to be releasing albums this year. So
right.
maybe we come from behind like a relay race, and once everybody's stuff is out there, Queensryche will come out with a new album when all the dust starts to settle a little bit. Yeah.
That's actually a good idea because you're right. There's going to be so much new music out this year.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that this record comes out in February. So it's like, it's early in the year. Let people digest that and enjoy that for the year. And, hopefully we can get in the studio. And, with the pandemic, I mean, we just don't know what's going to happen with shows, what's rescheduled, what will be canceled, studio time, book, it's kind of a day-by-day thing right now, I think, for pretty much everybody in the world, actually. It's hard to predict what's going to happen a month from now. You just don't know.
Right. No, that's so true. Being the vocalist in Queensryche, you stepping into that role, fans have really embraced you. And I'm wondering, how does it feel, to be embraced by those longtime fans? And what's been your favorite thing about the experience?
Surprisingly, because when a very a legendary band with a coveted singer and a sound, when they change a member, that's the hard pill for a lot of people to swallow and accept. And I'm very, very grateful for what I would consider the majority of the Queensryche audience. I think most of them have accepted this lineup and what I've been able to bring to the band. So I'm super thankful. The experience it's hard to put into words. Queensryche was one of my favorite bands growing up, obviously. And I played in cover bands, and I was a drummer in those bands, but we played some Queensryche cover songs, and to be able to be on stage and be like, wow, these guys, I watched Michael Wilton, in these videos when I was a teenager, or Eddie Jackson, or whatever, or we're playing this song, and I can remember listening to this record in my car, and now, like, the real guy that did it is standing next to me. Especially initially, that was like, holy crap, I can't believe this is happening. But, almost 9 years into the band now, and starting on album number 4 with me, you become a little desensitized. Not to confuse that with taking for granted. I certainly don't take it for granted, but just the experiences of traveling the world and creating new music, and then people requesting new songs. Hey, play this one off The Verdict, or I love this song off For Condition Human, or those are the very rewarding things where, even though the fans like to hear the classics, a lot of people want to hear the new stuff that I was a part of creating. And so that's a nice acknowledgement that I was able to contribute something that the listeners want to hear live as well. So I really can't complain.
Definitely. There's a lot of change just constantly in the music world, from the internet to concerts being on hold for a long time here. What do you think rock and metal music needs to do as a whole to survive and thrive as a genre going forward?
Oh, man. That's the $25,000 question right there. I don't know. Rock, heavy metal in particular has always been like kind of the underdog genre. The big numbers in sales really aren't the same as like a big country artist or a pop artist. And unless you're, Iron Maiden or Metallica or, something like that, it's most of these bands, 99% of them are grinding it out. And because the industry's changed, you're not able to just live off of publishing, or, you have to play live music. You have to sell merchandise. We do meet and greets. You have to try to get clever and be creative with supplementing the income that's lost from those other means of income. I don't know what the answer is to that, but I think that it's just one of those styles and genres where people are always going to want to see that live, and I don't think it's ever going to die. A lot of stuff starts to get formulated, and a lot of these bands all start to sound the same, and it's hard to distinguish one from the other. And then when it becomes saturated, something happens, there's a change, and then a needed change, and then something else comes about, and it's like a rebirth in that scene again. It's just like in the 80s when every band was, being like the LA glam band, and then that had to die out, and then the grunge thing came about in Seattle, and as much as like the real rock and metal fans like detested a lot of that stuff, it needed to change. And then here comes a whole new generation of players and music and sounds, and it's just an ever-evolving thing that you kind of roll with the punches and have to be, you have to observe kind of what's happening, and hopefully you can sustain and survive. And especially now with the pandemic, a lot of venues have closed, guarantees have changed, bands aren't really sure what they're going to be paid. Maybe they're getting a piece of the door. Can they really afford a tour bus? Do they need to get in a van? Okay, we're too old to go in a van, so maybe we're not going to do that. So it's a multifaceted, so many variables involved to give you like a nice magical answer to that question.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that you guys have done such a good job of, still being out there. Like you mentioned, it's just so different now, where concerts are a big help for bands, obviously, to make a living. And now with COVID gone, it seems like such a mess. But hopefully when concerts get back, what do you think those first concerts back after COVID is behind us will be like?
Oh, man. When people can feel safe and go to a live show and not be terrified, it's going to be like... I was just talking with Michael yesterday about that. We were like, okay, so when do you think we're going to play again? And as we said, what are we, what kind of set list did we do? And we both kind of looked at each other and said, I don't think it even matters what the set list is. I think people just want to see and hear live music again. Like, it doesn't even matter. They just want to feel free again and stand in that crowd, sing some songs, be with their friends, that whole experience. I think it's going to be emotional for people, to be honest, because it's like, it's been a year almost since we've played. And to get back on stage, it almost feels like the return from a farewell thing, here, we're finally at it, one more go around, even though it's not one more go around, but I think people are just going to be elated. I will be.
I totally agree. I look at footage of shows that I was at a year and a half ago and photos and stuff, and it seems like a different existence. People just like no mask, shoulder to shoulder. It's so crazy.
It feels weird to look at.
It totally does. And so I agree that when people feel safe again and we can actually congregate like that, it's going to be so wonderful. Yeah. I just can't wait.
Yeah. I seen a couple live things, and it's like, that seems like a lifetime ago, where you could like give somebody a high five in the audience, or be right up close to them and like maybe let them sing a line in your microphone. Now it's like, you don't even want to breathe the same air.
I know, it's so crazy.
It's weird. It's very surreal. It's a good observation that you made, because I feel the same way when I look at pictures. I'm like, God, it feels kind of foreign when I look at that. It's crazy.
I know. I wonder when this is all behind us, if we'll look back on this era and almost forget how weird it was. If it'll just kind of go back to normal and everything. I hope so.
Unless you know someone that's really been severely hurt by this or died from it, or I think a lot of people, we're a very desensitized culture. We see shootings on TV all the time. We see just horrible things, and we're just like, oh, there's another shooting, another this, but the person who lost a child in a school shooting they're not going to say, oh, another school shooting. They're not going to view it through the same lens,
Right.
And if you've, weathered through this unharmed, personally, you could probably view that a little differently. But I think people are still, even when they open up, there's still people that are going to be apprehensive. Even now with reduced capacities, it's a 50% capacity. Well, of that 50% that are allowed to go, maybe only 50% of those people go.
Right. Yeah.
You don't really know.
That's a good point. Well, is there anything else that you would want to add? It was great talking with you.
Just want to say thank you to you for your time and your interest, and I hope that you like the whole record and share it with your friends and your audience, and maybe we'll get contention for album of the year. So, just thanks to everyone for checking it out and supporting music still, and they can also February 5th, when the record comes out on Rat Pack Records, I'll be having merch available through my site, which is toddlatorre.com. And for now, you can go to Rat Pack Records and pre-order the album. Also on my website, there's a link that'll direct you to Rat Pack as well for pre-orders. And we have some really cool bundles and fun things for people. Pretty much just want to say thanks to everyone for giving it a chance and checking it out.
Well, I love the record, and I just love the heaviness, and I hope that you can get on the road and actually play some of these tracks.
That would be nice. If there's some pockets of downtime with Queensryche when things open up, maybe I can get out there and play a handful of shows at least, and try this stuff out live.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time.
There he is, Todd from Queensryche. Thank you for being an amazing guest on my show. Don't forget to check out his new record, Rejoice in the Suffering, which is actually his debut solo album, and it's a good one. I love that when an artist releases a debut record that is so good that you just feel like they've been a solo artist forever. Todd, just an awesome person, very personable, chatty, and an incredible talent. So Todd, once again, thank you for being a guest on my show. Lots of great stuff on the way on the podcast, more great guests. Plus, we'll talk about different random topics that have to do with music. Basically, I am here with you every week as we get through another year together, which hopefully it'll be a better year than last. But I'm going to be with you every step of the way, talking about new music that's coming out, remembering great music from the past. One thing that I'm doing a lot on the show this year is talking about some of the greatest music from the past, because I love to look back on music history and kind of figure out how did we get to where we are as a world musically. So lots of great different random topics on the show, and I'm very excited to be with you every step of the way right here on the podcast. And don't be shy, get in touch with me on social media. I promise I don't bite. Hit me up on Facebook at itsmeanne.com. Just head to that site. That's itsmeanne.com. Itsmeanne.com to link up on my personal Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat at Anne Erickson, Instagram at Erickson Anne. And you can also hit up the publication Audio Inc. Radio at facebook.com/Audio Inc. Radio, twitter.com/Audio Inc. Radio. And if for some crazy reason, I don't know why, but if you don't subscribe to the podcast yet, first of all, you are in big trouble with me. But go ahead and do that right now. It's very easy. Just search Anne Erickson or search Audio Inc. Radio wherever you rock out to podcast. Hit subscribe, just hit that button, and bam, you will be instantly added to the Audio Inc. Radio subscription list. One last thing, check out my band Upon Wings at uponwings.com. Female-led metal music. New stuff on the way, which I've been saying forever, but I finally mean it. Until next time, be safe, God bless, and we'll rock soon. It's Anne Erickson, and you rock.
It's Audio Inc. with Anne.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Audio Inc. Radio podcast. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. Get inked online at audioinkradio.com. I'm Anne Erickson for the Audio Inc. Radio podcast.